Hello guys and welcome to MK Recaps. Show the channel some love by liking and subscribing to our channel. This is John Wick. He is going through a very difficult time in his life. He just lost his wife, who fought against cancer for months and had to authorize the machines to be turned off in the last moments of her life. At the funeral, he turned out to be very tough, but one of his old work agents came to see him. His name was Marcos. He said that in life there is no reason for these things, and it was just another sad moment for so many others in their association. You rarely saw it. But we wanted to see how you were doing, he said to his old friend. But that night, he received a gift, something that would change his life forever, along with a letter from Ellen, his wife, that said he had to get something to love. Comes a very nice little puppy in which the letter left Jonathan very emotional, and the puppy was called Deez. That would be the beginning of his emotional recovery. The next morning, John woke up and first had to do his business. He was also hungry, so he went out to fill up his Mustang Boss 429 at the gas station. 3 other people were also there, filling up their gas. One of them thought John's car was really cool and asked him how much he wanted it. Of course, it obviously wasn't for sale, but the guy insisted, saying in Russian that everything in this life had a price. John also spoke Russian and replied by calling the guy stupid. That afternoon, John drove a few laps around the airport runway as a way to vent his pain and also proved that the Mustang was good on the brakes. However, things took a turn for the worse that night, as little Bigo heard a noise and went to John's room. After being surprised by the 3 men who were after his car keys, they hit him a few more times and killed the little puppy, the only remaining emotional connection he still had with his wife. The next morning, covered in anger and pain, he had to bury the little dog. It was a simple but extremely strong motivation to seek revenge. The young guy ended up in Aurelio's workshop, a guy well known in the criminal underworld. The guy wanted a new plate number and hot documents, but Aurelio didn't want to involve himself in that kind of dangerous business. Then, Aurelio called the guy's dad, a powerful Russian mafia called Baiko, telling him about the offense his son had committed, stealing the most dangerous mafia car. He then told the guy that John was working for his father, giving him a nice meaning that it would have a repercussion that, in the sequence, even Capona says that his father wouldn't like it, and he didn't accept that car in his workshop. Later, John appeared in the workshop himself to find out if his Tang was there, and since it wasn't, he just wanted to borrow a car from Aurelio. He later got a call from the boss, saying he wanted to know why Aurelio hit his son. With a very simple answer, it was because he had stolen John Wick's car and killed the puppy. So far, in the world of crime, it's not much of a big deal, but he was just worried. He wanted to see his son, who had just come home from work. Gave him a drink, and then punched the kid in the stomach for stealing a car and not owning up to it. It was what he did and who he did it with, John, who was once one of his former partners, who they called a parrot. He was the one they sent to kill the boogeyman. He was a man of focus, dedication, and a damn strength of will, which he had seen him kill 3 men in a bar with just a pencil. So dedicated that to get out, Vigo gave him an impossible task that clearly he achieved, everything to be able to be with a girl. And now, after a few years since his wife died, now his son stole his only car and even killed his puppy. Knowing that there was nothing he could do to protect his son, he can't do anything. John Wick dug up his weapons and the gold he earned working as a hired assassin, and even the boy's dad called him to make peace and resolve the situation. John did not say a word because that night the boogeyman was back. And even the guy's dad sent an assassin to his house. Jonathan started wasting the 4 guys in the blink of an eye. In sequence, he fought the other guys, but one thing he knows how to do very well is to waste bullets. In addition to killing every last one of them, he easily stuck a knife in their chests, leaving 12 dead in just a few minutes. The neighbors complained about the noise and called the police. The policeman who knew him very well already knew that he had gone back to his assassin business, but John just said that he was cleaning up the garbage. Actually, the hired killers have their own method of cleaning, calling Charlie and his team to clean up all that mess, and he was paid in gold coins. After that, Vigo, the boy's dad, put Jonathan's head at a bounty of $2 million, and he hired Marcos, a personal friend of John's, to do the job. John went to stay at the Coliseum, an exclusive hotel for hired assassins, where he was well respected by the waitress. That night at the hotel bar, he went to talk to the owner Winston, who gave him a warning. Winston knew that he had gone out once, and that is a great gift for an assassin, but now he has continued killing people. Something else would seduce him to continue, and he would sink into this world of crime. But now, it was too late, right? And finding out that he was indebted to a lawyer, he must pay back to avoid breach of contract. He was not willing to break the rules, and he would double the prize. John got a tip that the boy was in a nightclub called Red. He prepared himself, and the club was full of Yusuf's henchmen. But he entered with ease, already catching one in the locker room, and in the sequence beating Yusuf's men. His end was to be drowned on the second floor. Jonathan was waxing the guards, and he didn't have mercy on anyone, but he was discovered in the confusion. Fighting with the henchmen, the boss found out that he was there. Of course, that didn't take the attention of John, who continued his bloodbath, killing a guy who honestly looked like John could have killed him. The boss right there escaped to the club. And then my friend's bullet. With my son, there are no stray bullets. They are precise shots, a way to reload the pistol very quickly. There is not a very characteristic way of finishing off his opponents, and until he was hit in that part, he had already killed almost 40 henchmen, and the CEF ended up escaping. After that, John still fought with one of the security guards, who managed to get the better of John by throwing Andrade on top of him. But he would still continue his hunt, giving the message to the kid through Victor's phone, returning to the Continental to take care of the doctors and candy that would help him with the pain. Of course, he had to rest more. His friend Marcos was watching, warning John that there was someone in his room. It was close that he was willing for $4 million to break the rules of the Continental. There was the beating, like me, loose in the room, and John got the better of it, threatening to put a bullet in her head if she didn't say where he was alive. But she spilled the beans about a fake church where the mobster kept his personal riches and asked Harry for another assassin to take care of it for him. He went to that one. He arrived at the church with his finger itching to kill henchmen, and then, with the help of the priest, he opened the safe to make a little mess with things in Vigo, causing the mafioso to lose a lot of important things. With the fire, he was waiting on top of the building already, squeezing, and escaped, killing the poor Harry. He didn't care about the rules of the Continental. It's no use because the machine gun was loaded. And there, in the churchyard, he took down some more henchmen, but he was almost run over, and with that, the big boss captured him. John was driven to madness by the actions of Vigo, who burned evidence of crimes including recordings and blackmail that were priceless in the city. When John was tied up, Vigo was about to kill him and had asked his henchmen to asphyxiate him, but his friend Marcos intervened and even fought off the other Johnny using jiu-jitsu. John then took a gun and ran after Vigo's car, getting in front and killing the driver to show that he meant business. Vigo had no choice but to hand over the location of his son and cancel the reward. It didn't take long for John to get there and exact his revenge by killing Vigo with a long-range weapon and destroying the cars. Although John thought the boss deserved to be slapped before he died, he considered the job done and ended his account at the hotel. He even received a Dodge Charger as an apology from the management and to thank his friend Marcos for saving him once again. However, the problem was that John was being closely watched as he was working with a vehicle. He went after Vigo where for the mafioso it was considered treason, and after being beaten, Vigo would have tortured him to death. But Marcos managed to get loose and died in his own way. Of course, John would go after Vigo, but he didn't know where to find him. Winston revealed to John where Perkins lived after she was excommunicated from the Continental. John was on his way to Erie and had stopped at a nearby port in the city. Another chase ensued, where the henchmen were unable to do anything against John Wick. Despite killing a bunch of henchmen, John remained undeterred in his quest for revenge. Vigo threw John's Dodge on top of a platform just as it started to rain, leaving only one monster left, and Jordan on that Vigo wanted to fight the old-fashioned way. I don't know where this crazy guy thought he would win in a normal fight, but alive, he had an idiot knife. He was injured breaking the iron arm, and with that, he stuck the knife in his neck, killing the last mobster. John was going to a veterinary kennel to get some medicine and try to recover his stitches. That's where he found a new friend, a pit bull. He was going home on foot because he still hadn't recovered his car. Better than nothing, Tang was with Vigo's brother to soften his luck, another powerful mobster. To be able to enter Russo's lair, he had to get a letter from one of his henchmen. Abram also knew that John Hickman was the man of focus, commitment, and damn strength of will. I think all the big bosses give the same description of him, including the pencil story too. Meanwhile, John was going to be slick on his henchmen, and it took a long time for the phone to ring. He said he came to nail his car, and the Mustang to him also had sentimental value. Of course, getting out of there would not be a very simple task, and good poor Mustang took more hits than John Wick. That one was fine, broken down and even lost the door, but that didn't stop him from using a car as a weapon. After being ejected from his car, he knocked over several of Abram's henchmen, who would be suffering in the beating, and with the face the mobster was, he knew that John Wick would appear. And like John Wick, he went up to his living room, and there they toasted with vodka. John Wick asked for a pass for this war between families Abram was suffering, and drove home with his car. Poor Mustang was pretty beat up, but it was also part of the emotional connection he had. He still had his pit bull with him, who was waiting when he arrived. Everything worked out well, and now he will enjoy his retirement. Aurelio was going to fix his car, but it would take a while to get ready, and Jonathan was willing to end his life as a hitman for good. The problem is that as soon as he finished putting the concrete, he received a visit from Santino D'Antonio, now from the Italian mafia, telling John that no one leaves that life of a murderer and comes back without consequences. He took from Bolsonaro even a fact that symbolized a promissory note that John Wick owed him and wanted his services as payment, but Jonathan was not interested. And he dismissed Santino D'Antonio, who insisted he was obligated to pay the promissory note. But John Wick asked him to find someone else and asked Santino to leave his house. He left, and the consequence of that was released in his beautiful house, which is incredibly sad. Nobody leaves someone in peace, and the good memories he still had in that house with his wife burned that night. You are crazy there, you know, right? Your anger was great. He went to the Continental again and wanted to talk with Winston, as the manager of the Continental and a big part of the rules and laws of the world of assassins. The thing about giving the note to Santino was serious. There were the two rules that couldn't be broken: spilling blood on the Continental premises and honoring the notes. And if he discovered one of these rules, it would be an excommunication, and the punishment would be death. So he had no choice. He would have to pay what he owed to Santino D'Antonio. So, they thought the receptionist would take care of his dog, and he went to Santino to find out what he wanted. The mobster was a billionaire who just wanted more power, and he wanted John to kill his sister, Diana D'Antonio, because as the older one, she would disappear to her father's place in the High Dome. And for power, it's worth even killing her sister. Janatas knew it was a complicated task, and now he was officially back to work. He went to where Gianna D'Antonio was staying. She stayed at the Continental in Rome, being greeted by the eye manager, who just wanted to know if he was in Rome because of the Holy Pope. He replied that it wasn't just another business, showing the level of danger that John Wick could be. Okay, he needed clothes, weapons, and maps, everything an assassin needs to invade the place extremely protected by security guards. His clothing was bulletproof, the robust tactical weaponry, and lots of ammunition. So, he continued his mission, always watched by one of Santino D'Antonio's personal security guards. And that party was made especially for Gianna D'Antonio. She had a personal assassin who protected her called Kasia and asked him to take care of the door as she was going to touch up her makeup. However, in her room, there was John Wick, waiting to do his job. She knew he was her emissary of death since the promissory note was her brother's. But she told John that she would live her life her way and would die her way, too, by slitting her own wrists and lying in bed in his bathtub. And as soon as she passed out, John Wick finished the job. But on the way out, he ran into Kasia. And if he was there, it was for someone important. Without thinking twice, they already exchanged shots, but John escaped, and it was time for it to rain from the sky right, starting to kill henchmen right there on the stage. And he was taking them down until he got to the writing and Castagna. Now he knew that his protege was dead. And there, in the crypts, he found Santino's personal guard, who were now also after him. But what does John Wick have besides good accuracy? That's a lot of ammunition to take down an army. And that's what he did. He killed everything that appeared in front of him, showing how to manage ammunition and tactics to kill. Even when they left the crypts, he had killed more than 45 henchmen. But now he had a stone in his shoe. hunting, which had issues to settle, began to fight in the streets of Rome until this fight took place in the continental dependencies. And as there were rules, the two had to calm the tempers in the bar. But according to Kaisan, he was far from being free, because now he would go after him, saying that he would kill him quickly as a professional courtesy. And there was Santino's bodyguard there at the bar. He let her know that he was watching him, and he also knew sign language and told her that he was the one watching her. "What's the matter? Ready service." John would go home. The problem was that Santino, for Joao having killed his sister, would put a bounty of $7 million, almost 40 million reis, on the head of John Wick, and this contract was sent to all the hired killers in New York. Only who, according to Winston, Santino stabbed the devil in the back and had no idea what was coming. For John was to be impeached all the time by a hired assassin wherever he went. And that story about killing 3 men with pencils? You could taste it because he was killed. There were 2. And to top it off, I was still on his tail. It's amazing how they don't hit people in those shootouts. This one went through the mall and then they got to the subway inside the wagon. As soon as it emptied, they started fighting. In short, John got the better of it by sticking the knife in Cash's garden. And if he pulled it, he would bleed to death, saying to consider it as a professional courtesy. But for John, it was not easy to escape the murderers. So, he went to a beggar and gave him a gold coin, asking him to take it to his boss who killed those 2 murderers. John woke up with serum and bandage on his wounds. He was the head of the beggars who asked for alms all over New York. In fact, it was all a facade because it was just to touch information to know everything that was going on. They met in the past when I gave him the choice who slit his throat. And if he kept the pressure on, he would survive. And so, he survived. He became a mafioso in the underworld of New York. And now John Wick needed his help because he could consider this as an exchange because he would kill Santino, who would take a philosopher out of his foot, which is as soon as he went from the top, he would end his beggar business for New York. John just wanted one gun so good he gave him a Kimber 1911.45 with a capacity of 7 bullets. And as the bounty on his head was 7 million, he would only have 7 bullets. Interesting and worrying, but it was that or nothing. So, Joao went after Santino at the Feast of his Crown. They are for the High Dome, and as soon as he saw Santini, his henchman ended up with 7 bullets in the blink of an eye. But henchmen don't have a soul, but they have a pistol. So what? New bullet, and henchmen dead in droves. John Hundred Mercy killed everything in front of him. And the thing of focus and determination really is no joke. For John, Santini did not hide in a mirror exhibition at the art gallery. And for Santino, John was addicted to revenge. And that's why he had that damn willpower. Of course, the fighting and shooting still continued in the art gallery. But Santino's personal bodyguard arrived. While John was still killing henchmen, she got Santino out of the gallery and stayed to fight. John bumped into him, and despite the girl being dedicated, she didn't stand a chance against the idiot Santino. He went to hide at the Continental because he knew that John could do nothing there. He was there for a long time, and not to get sick of the dishes, John was supposed to just leave, but what he did was put a bullet in the head of Santino. Then, instead of ending John's problems, it only increased Joao's. Despite picking up his dog to go home, there was no more house. In fact, it was just debris from the fire, and the consequences of what he did were seen the next morning. The top management took over the contract, and now they had doubled the price. John Wick's head was now worth $14 million, a little more than 70 million reis, and for killing a man on the Continental's premises, he was declared excommunicado and banned forever from the premises of all the Continentals in the world. Jonathan wasn't dead because Winston asked him not to do it, but he had an hour to escape, and he gave it. He might need the promissory note along the way. For now, what he faced was far worse than he'd ever faced, but John Wick gave the warning that whoever came after him, he would kill them all. Winston didn't doubt it, and neither did I, though he had to disappear fast because within an hour the alert was issued worldwide that Johnny was now the most wanted guy in the world. What kind of madness is this? The ban time was issued at 6 p.m., and everyone was already aware that John Wick's time was short. Like a good person, he gave a coin to the taxi driver to leave his dog at the Continental and went to the public library of the city in search of a Russian book. Not just that, there he also found a murderer, Ernest, who didn't care much if the time was up yet or not and wanted to kill him. Despite his size, Ernest was fast and managed to hurt John, but he put the big one to sleep quickly. Now he needed a doctor. He went to the doctor who, since he had 5 minutes, would do his best, but counting the last seconds, he had to stop. Those were the rules. The doctor could no longer help him. However, John finished closing the stitches by himself, and the doctor showed him where there was medicine. But with that help, they would possibly know, and he even had to shoot the doctor at his request. Joao had to run to an antique shop while the assassins arrived. He quickly mounted a revolver and put the antique in his ear at the right moment of the drum and threw an assassin. He knew he had one more behind him, so John found that the weapon was knives, and as for him, knives make all the difference, killing 4 assassins with white weapons very easily. There was one that stuck the knife in the volley and the other one with an axe in the head. Staying in the streets was very dangerous. So much so that he was run over twice. He had to hide in a stable to escape, except that now there were bikers, but with a gun. John's contract only increased the price. Now it was $15 million, but he had a place to go showing the crucifix in a theater, and so they let him in. There, watching a boy's presentation, there was the chief director of a Russian gypsy group called Roskaroma, and Jonathan grew up in this place. He was part of this group, but even so, they were in danger for helping him. But like the son of a Belarusian member of Roskaroma, he had the right to a pass, and the director had to help him. That crucifix was actually a ticket that gave the right to a single request. He asked the director for a ticket to go to Casablanca in Morocco. He was then marked, symbolizing that his pass had been used, and he could never go home again. Could someone who had made such a mess right then? High Dome sent a judge to find out who was guilty of leaving John Wick to escape. First, knowing that a member of High Dome was killed in the Continental Dependencies, Winston, despite serving the rules for 40 years, would be stripped of his car and would have 7 days to transition. She also went to talk to Power King as he gave a Kimber 1911, and as there were 7 bullets, he had 7 days to abdicate the throne. Even though he said he didn't exist without him to judge, even the underworld had rules, and he had 7 days. Already, John went to the White House in Morocco. He had no place in the world that assassins would leave John Wick alone and start fighting him, but Boss, one of these murderers, prevented this fight by saying that the management of the hotel granted amnesty to John. He went to the Continental from Casablanca, and Mrs. Sophia was waiting for him at the Hazar. She had 2 trained dogs, and she already received shots for them. But she could not kill because she had a note with John. When she needed Jonathan's help, he needed her help. Dad tried to explain that he was the manager of Continental now and couldn't go around shooting goons. But John needed her to help him take him to his old boss, and there he would seek guidance. Of course, this was extremely dangerous since John was the most wanted guy in the world. They could kill her and even her daughter, but it was because of John that the girl was safe. So she would fulfill her promise and take John to his former boss. The judge already hired a very dangerous assassin called Zay to go after everyone who betrayed the high leadership. And then had the mission to kill John Wick. The first ones his assassins went after were the Thread and the director. Despite his power and his agreement with the top management, he had to pay in blood. He would extend his hand and swear loyalty to the top management, but he would also have his punishment. Joao Enrique reached Sophia's former boss, a guy called Barada, who was responsible for designing the printing of the gold coins of the killers and the promissory notes. A guy who played by the rules, but what John wanted to know about him was how to get to Tag Maui or Elder. The only man in the world who was above the High Dome, and what went wrong. He explained that you can't find it otherwise unless the Elder wants people who try to have to prove their courage and get lost in the desert. Follow the golden star until they can't take it anymore, and when they take their last breath, maybe he will find it or not. Thanks for the tip. They were leaving for the information he wanted. Something in return, and since he liked Sophia's dog, he wanted to keep it as proof of loyalty. Of course, she said no, so she yelled and shot the dog. I'm Sophia. In rage, she took a gun from the dog's vest and started shooting at everything she was capable of. Everything that is said, but here we had a new element. In addition to Sophia doing it super well, she had helped with her dogs. I'll tell you, some little animals were very useful. They took the henchman's attention when they themselves couldn't finish the shooter, and working as a team gets to be even beautiful to see. And John, well, he was doing what he does best, reloading faster than his opponents. Damn, after the bloodbath of his son's help and his wonderful little animals, she took to the desert since she wanted to find Tag Mowry. John then paid the promissory note, and in her anger, she didn't even leave him water. The thing about crossing the desert must not be easy for a suit. Still, Joao wouldn't last long, and even following the star, they said he lasted only one night, and then in the morning, he didn't endure the sunstroke. Meanwhile, his killers went to the Association of Beggars of Burger King, killing everyone without mercy, and even the king had his punishment. 7 bullets. John Wick 1. It was 7 cuts that hardly anyone would survive. One has finally been found by the elder and asked him why he should live. He said he wanted to live to be able to remember every day that he loves Maria Helen for the rest of his life, but gave him a choice, his banishment. If he agreed to work for the summit, doing what he does best for the rest of his life, or else he would die right there. And his first task was to kill Winston since he forgot the meaning of loyalty. His banishment and contract would remain open until he fulfilled his task. And as he saw that he had no choice, he accepted. And to prove loyalty, Tag Mowry, the elder, wanted him to rip his finger off. So, Joao Enrique without thinking twice did it and thus proved his loyalty to the team. His banishment from New York was lifted, and he would have a team to escort him. The same team of assassins from Zero, as he doesn't like to be followed, right? And with a beautiful hat, in front of Zero, he killed one of his men and escaped from the station. In the sequence, he killed 2 bikers and took one of the motorcycles. And it would be a classic motorcycle chase. I just don't know why they insist on wanting it. Fighting John still at high speed, everyone got the worst of it. With every tumble, I felt sorry for the bikes. However, still on his tail, they followed him to the Continental. There they couldn't do business in the dependency, and Jonathan was there to see the manager who, well, Insta wasn't really keen on resigning. And John had his mission to kill him, but he wasn't really keen on killing his friend either. So what the judge did was deconsecrate the entire Continental of New York. The hotel was no longer a safe place, and soon it would be full of assassins to kill Jonathan and Winston. And with that, now John's privileges were restored. So John could ask for what he wanted. Winston had a safe full of weapons at his disposal. However, things have changed a bit since when John Wick left. The agents would be more prepared to face, and the weaponry should be a little more tactical because as soon as the hotel closed, 2 buses arrived full of people with protection from head to toe. And the thing got a little more serious. What does it do of better hunting? The problem is that the agents arrived prepared with armor to do the bulletproof, and it wasn't just anyone to take them down. Even from the weed that was facing difficulties had to shoot between the gap of the helmets to kill it. But not to save money, it's really the thing was to use 12 caliber steel bullets. Now, yes, there was no armor that held. And passing the lick on John Wick, agents get to be an op character at the end of the day or his opponents who don't have enough training to face him. Okay, maybe it was for your men to have training since it seems that John's weakest art is Kung Fu. But Joao was trained in the legendary Arthur, right? And with swords, he managed to kill the henchman. It's worth remembering that everyone gets old, right? And fighting against 2 who just didn't kill because they respected John Wick very well and were honored to fight him. But now he would use his belt and would have to prove that he wasn't that old. He knocked them both downstairs. He just didn't kill them because of the respect they had for him. Arriving from the final fight against Zero, who insisted that he and John were the same, despite John being faster than him, he taught Zero a lesson in humility, showing him that he also knew how to use the wakizashi, the second sword of a samurai. He stuck it in Zero's chest, and now Zero didn't have the breath to fight. The judge proposed a truce for Winston, and truces are always very interesting. He didn't leave his mind vault, just wanted to prove her strength that inclusiveness was far beyond that hotel. She was already willing to reconsecrate the hotel and give power to Winston again, since he was a symbol of power for 40 years for the Dome. But he would have to do something about the idiot, and what he did was shoot John Wick, who fell off the Continental. And how the judge believed he was dead, accepted Winston's terms, and it was a nice move by the manager. This would give the Continental power again, but the judge went to the alley, and he didn't shave there anymore. She didn't want to see the bogeyman visiting the High Dome at dawn, but Winston said he would solve that problem. But it wasn't just John who survived. The king of the underworld was also full of injuries and with a lot of hatred for this Alcapla, wanting someone to seek revenge. And look at this, John Wick was also very angry with them, thus ending the 3 John Wick films that have a simple story that became a war. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you all enjoyed the brief movie recap. Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Do not forget to tell me a movie you really loved in your childhood and would love to see a recap on it. Have a blessed day.